Hey guys, Scott here. It's been a slow news week or month. It's been a slow news 3 months. Basically, nothing has happened in like half a year. So Dead by Daylight has been very, very uninteresting at the moment. So we have the Vecna PTB coming out, which I'm really interested in, and that's kind of like next week. But like I said, there's not been much to talk about. I'm a discussion channel. Discussion channel plus nothing to talk about equals I have to reach into my deep dark recesses of random tier lists I've had ideas for but never really just decided to make. So this is one of them that I've always wanted to make, and we'll do it up to Krasue. This is basically a tier list of how likely a killer player is likely to be toxic based off of the killer that they're playing. For some reason, certain killers when you see them in game are always a certain way, and I just don't really know why that is. So let's go off with the Krasue. Krasue is kind of in the whatever category, considering you see her once every 50 games at this point. I don't think there's a big enough sample size, in my opinion, to even justify where she actually is, but she is honestly right in the middle. I think a lot of people used to like her for how easy she was to play, but because she's harder to play now, you don't see her as much. But I don't really notice her swing one way or the other. There used to be, when she was in her super, super strong form, you know, you'd have the chicken head, iridescent add-on Krasues, and those are usually in the usually toxic section, in my opinion, but for the most part, yeah. Now, for the record, when I say toxic, I don't just mean like they camp and tunnel. I mean like they're hitting you on the hook, they're humping you on the ground, like actual BM shit. Just like occasionally camping or tunneling or something like that. I'm not counting that as toxic because it's just not. No, I'm talking about like people genuinely trying to be fucking assholes about it. So just to set the board straight. Springtrap, I'm going to put into the rarely toxic category. I think a lot of people that play Springtrap are just happy to be playing Springtrap. They want to soy jack at the screen because, oh my god, it's Springtrap. And so honestly, I would say that most Springtrap players that I encounter are just pretty chill. They're usually trying to do crazy shots, and they're just usually FNAF fans. So, I don't know. I really haven't encountered anything other than occasional proxy camping with like a ready hatchet, but they usually seem kind of fine. Ghouls are... This may be a hot take. I'm only going to put them in sometimes toxic. Everybody hates the Ghoul. I don't know. I don't hate the Ghoul that much. I don't really hate going against Ghoul that much. To me, they're on the upper end of what is fair to go against while still being extremely, extremely strong. Ghoul has a decent amount of counterplay. Cool Ghoul. But I don't really see a lot of Ghouls other than like tunneling really try to like go hard into BMing, which is weird because the Ghouls are everywhere and you think statistically I would see more. I think more people would probably put them like around here, but this is just in my personal experience. I don't necessarily encounter a lot of toxic Ghouls. There's a lot of sweaty Ghouls that are just trying to win. But in terms of like going out of their way to be toxic, I surprisingly don't encounter it that much. It does happen for sure, but not that much. Houndmaster, I'm going to say rarely or almost never. Again, Houndmaster is one of those killers that's very rare to go against. I'm going to put him in rarely. I've had a couple try to like have them like hump me with the dog, but it doesn't work out so well. I'm going to say rarely, but again, they're so uncommon to even see that that's rare in general. So, Dracula, I'm torn between usually and sometimes. You know what? I'm actually going to go sometimes. Dracula has incredible BM potential with the dog, so I do see it a lot. When like we're talking about BM, it's Dracula dog form is one of the notable animations. I'll just put it like that. But for the most part, I don't really see it that often. Usually Draculas are just trying to win. Again, I'm not considering, you know, tunneling or camping here to be like toxic, because it's not really toxic. It's just that's more sweaty than anything. But Dracula players are usually just right there in the middle, in my opinion. Pretty chill. Vecna. Vecna, again, is sort of in the Dracula territory of usually being sweaty, and a lot of tunneling goes on there. But again, in terms of being toxic, I feel like they're just kind of no more or less toxic than any other given killer. They're kind of in the same. Unknown, I would say, is in the rarely toxic category. I feel like there's not many people playing Unknown, and those that are those that have like a lot of hours in the game. Honestly, I'm going to put this in almost never toxic. I rarely see toxic Unknowns. They're usually people that have a lot of hours in the game because Unknown's a very hard killer to master. And typically those players are not going to have the frustrations that lead to BMing a lot more. It's typically like, you know, like a newer player thing. Not all the time, but usually. So yeah, I usually don't see it. Chucky, I'm going to put him in the usually to almost guaranteed. There was a time when Chucky was a lot stronger, where he was like a guaranteed toxic. But I'd say he's in the usually toxic section now. And to be fair, you can't even be mad because it's so thematic to the character that you're kind of just expecting it to begin with. But yeah, there's a lot of Chucky humping on the ground, a lot of hitting on hook. That is a very, very common thing with Chucky. So that's going to be our first usually toxic. Xenomorph. Honestly, I feel like most Xenomorphs I go against are assholes. There's not too many of them, but most of them are usually trying to be little shits. If I could put him like here in between, I would, but I'm going to put him on here for now. Xenomorphs, for some reason, I guess, are frustrated usually with like getting burned out of their power or the fact that their killer is just sort of ignored in general. So I can definitely see a lot of frustrations there. And I do think more Xenomorphs than not are going to be little shits. Larry. Larry. This one's hard because a lot of Larrys are usually very sweaty, especially the slugging Singularities. But again, I don't necessarily consider that toxic unless they intentionally do it to waste your time. So, yeah, I don't know, man. I feel like this is usually... I'm going to put him in sometimes toxic. Skull Merchant? Honestly... I'm going to put Skull Merchant in usually toxic because the 5 people left playing Skull Merchant are so just distraught that they're still playing Skull Merchant that they usually hit people on hooks and stuff like that. I don't see very many Skull Merchants, but when I do, they're usually hitting people on hooks and going out of their way to just vent their frustration at the fact that they play Skull Merchant. So that one is at least understandable, but usually a lot of Skull Merchants I see are usually kind of assholes. Knight, I'm going to put into usually toxic as well. I'm not really sure what it is about Knight players, but a lot of them, will pincer attack you in a corner with an undefendable down. There's nothing you can do, and then they'll, nod at you yeah, I did that. No, you didn't. Your fucking NPC did that. I had to run into you, you stupid. But I have noticed a lot of Knights tend to be on the more toxic side. And I think there is some level of... comparison between people that are newer to the game or not quite as good and BMing more. I feel like it's a linear scale. It's not linear, maybe. When you're new, you don't really BM. Once you get some hours in and you get some confidence, then your BMing is at the highest amount. Then as you get better and better at the game, it tends to go down and down and down as you realize what's the point. I'm not saying that's for everybody, but that tends to be usually how I feel it is. But Knight players that only do the pincer attack and stuff like that. I'm not talking about the Knights that have mastered the killer. They know how to handle loops correctly. They know how to handle macroing the entire map and stuff like that. I'm talking about Knights that just get you into a corner, run you down, and then just pincer attack you with 2. Those are usually the ones that do it. So I feel like there's some comparison between how good they are at the game and how much they BM, but that's just a theory. Wesker players... I'm going to say nowadays, Wesker players are usually kind of chill. I feel like most Weskers I go against are just trying just sweet hug techs or just going for cool shots. They seem to be, ever since they removed the ability to relentlessly tunnel off the hook with the infection, I feel like most Wesker players are now pretty chill, kind of in the hillbilly territory. But there are definitely some that still will be assholes, but for the most part, I feel like Weskers are pretty chill. Dredges, I feel like, God, when's the last time I saw a Dredge BM somebody? Never. I actually can't even remember the last time I've seen a Dredge BM somebody. Yeah, I guess Dredge players are just chill. Sadako. For some reason, Sadako usually toxic. I don't know why. A lot of Sadakos will slug just to slug, not even to do condemn. They will slug in order to be a dick, and I don't know why. I've noticed a lot of the thing with usually being toxic is the killer is on the weaker side, and it might be they're just so frustrated with the killer that they're playing that they result in expanding that frustration to other people or expending it on other people. I don't know, maybe there's some trend there, but a lot of these Sadakos I go against are usually pretty mean. Artist is sort of right in the middle. Artist is just boring for everybody, but doesn't really swing one way or the other. Pinheads. I feel like Pinhead is on the high end of sometimes toxic, but not so much. I think they used to have way more toxic players, but I haven't really noticed it be that bad anymore. I don't see too many Pinheads either. Small size. Nemesis. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to put you in usually toxic. In addition to just the relentless tunneling that a Nemesis player is going to do. they're usually going to be the ones that are punching you on the hook. And to be fair, it's a very satisfying punch sound effect, so who can blame them? But Nemesis are pretty likely to BM you in a match. That's unfortunately usually toxic for me. Trickster, I'm also going to put there. For some reason, Trickster players are assholes. I don't know why. There's a couple that are chill, but usually people that are drawn to Trickster, who's just frankly miserable in general to go against, they tend to embrace that. They embrace the fact that the killer is really just not fun at all to go against, and they double down on it. So I've noticed Trickster players are usually kind of mean. Twins players. You know, there's so few of them. This might be... Yeah, I'm only going to put them in sometimes toxic. It doesn't mean going against the twins is only sometimes a bad experience. If you're playing solo queue, going against twins is basically universally always a bad experience. But it's because they kind of are built to slug people. And that can be very, very frustrating in solo queue. But that's not really the twins player's fault. This is a list for people, or for how much a killer is going to like BM you. The player is going out of their way to be toxic to you. If they're just required to slug like Oni or something like that, it's not really their fault. It's the killer's design, and I can't really punish them for that, but it's so rare. Blights, I'm going to have to put into usually. Blights are definitely usually. Blight has a pretty high skill ceiling, but the skill floor is pretty low too. You can just sort of kick pallets and zone people with superior speed, so it doesn't take much to get a lot of results with Blight. And because of that, a lot of, weaker players are drawn to that, where they can still win and then have their whole superiority complex. I can't talk right now. Superiority complex on people. So, I guess that sort of breaks the trend of the weaker killer. Sometimes it's the stronger ones too, because weaker players can win with it, and they're not really confident in their own skills, so they want to gloat about the times that they do wins, kind of thing. So, I usually notice Blights to be more on the toxic side, not like a guaranteed or anything. Pyramidhead. I feel like I want to put Pyramidhead into usually. Nah, I'll put Pyramid into sometimes. A lot of Pyramid Heads are Giga Tunnelers because the killer is sort of meant to do that. But like I said, I'm not going to count that as being toxic. We're talking about hitting you on a hook and, all that kind of stuff. And I don't really think Pyramid Heads go out of their way too much to do that kind of thing. They will go out of their way to, like, slug and tunnel and stuff like that. But I'm not going to count that, so I'm just going to say sometimes. Deathslinger. I feel like for some reason Deathslinger is usually toxic. I don't know how many times I've been shot by an eerie coin Deathslinger, and as he's reeling me in, he's giving me the nods and then he'll hump me on the ground. That's a pretty common occurrence. I don't know why. To be fair, the nod is funny as shit, so I kind of can't fault them for it. Like, it's pretty funny. And the survivor can also nod too. If both of them do it, then it's consensual wholesome. But if only the Deathslinger's doing it, then that's toxic, I guess. I don't know. But a lot of Deathslingers are little shits. I will definitely say that. Oni, I don't really notice Onis being toxic like ever. They have to slug a lot because that's built into their kit, but I really don't notice them going out of their way to BM, so. Demogorgon, honestly, I feel like most people that play Demogorgon are pretty chill as well. I don't really see them going out of their way to do anything mean. Ghostface is usually toxic. I'm gonna put that on a high end of usually toxic. And again, it sort of like fits with the whole Chucky thing where it fits the character, where he's just kind of a little shit, but I mean, if you have a teabag function built into your killer, it's going to be used. I mean, it's right there. How can you not? So, Ghostface, I'm going to say usually toxic. Plague spews toxic venom, so guaranteed toxic. XD joke. No. Plagues are never... not never. They're very uncommonly toxic, so I'm going to put them down here. Legion players, surprisingly, I find to be little shits a lot. Again, I think we're having like a pattern of like easy to play things resulting in the players being drawn to them that are not that great. So when they win, they don't win that much. So when they do, they want to like make the most of it and gloat about it. That's like that theory I'm cooking in my head. I'm trying to find like a pattern amongst these, but Legion sort of fits that category as well. Spirit, there was a time when I put her like here, when old prayer beads was a thing. Pre-nerf Spirit, I would put usually. Here, I'd say they're just sort of run-of-the-mill. Some of them are, some of them aren't. So pretty average there. Clown, I think, is going to be my first guaranteed toxic. I don't know what it is about clown players, but they are all assholes, like every single one of them. I don't know why. Again, very easy to play killer, so maybe it's that type of thing. I don't know. Every clown player that I've met, with like maybe one or two exceptions, is just a fucking asshole that's going to hump you on the ground or hit you on a hook and nod at you. I don't know what it is. I think it's a combination of pretty decent in chase while being easy to play equals that. But yeah, clowns are going to be the first and possibly only guaranteed toxic for me. Pigs, I'm actually going to put in sometimes toxic because there's a very stark contrast. There are the super toxic slug you and follow you on the ground while nodding at you and letting your head explode pigs. But then there's also the heckin' wholesome snoot booperino pigs that kind of counteract that as well. So I'm going to put it squarely in the middle because there's some really big asshole pigs, but some super wholesome pigs as well. And they kind of counteract each other. Freddy's? Freddy's are usually dicks. I don't know why. There's not that many of the people that play Freddy anymore, but usually from like just a gut experience, Freddy players usually play on the meaner side. I'm not really sure what that is. Bubba, I'm actually, you know what? I'm going to say rarely toxic. No, I can't. I can't do that because basement Bubbas like to hit on the hook. I'm going to put sometimes toxic. I've noticed most Bubbas will like, try to proxy camp and stuff like that, but again, we're not counting that. But there are those basement Bubbas that will hit you on the hook, and I honestly think he's just fine. Most Bubbas that I encounter are just playing the game normally. Some of them will give you a slap on the hook, but for the most part, Bubba is not any more or less toxic nowadays than he used to be. Huntress. I feel like Huntress is in this sometimes as well. There are definitely mean Huntress players, and then there are Huntress players that just try to sit back and go for amazing shots all game. So definitely a balance there. I almost want to lean more towards usually, but I feel like that wouldn't be fair. Doctor. I'm going to put doctor in the sometimes. I was almost going to put rarely, but I'm going to put sometimes because there are some doctors that'll like try to bring a game offering and then, do the full skill check build and just try to make the match go on as long as possible. That veers off into trying to win into just being annoying. So for things like that, I think there's annoying things that doctors do, but they're not too bad nowadays. Hags are usually bitches. Again, the play style of Hag sort of makes you proxy camp. It's just sort of built into her kit. But for some reason, Hags are usually just assholes. Again, it's one of those things where, like twins, it's very rare to encounter a Hag, but they're usually mean about it. And I'm not really sure why. Myers, I find to be right in the middle. There are some Myers players that are dicks and some that are just kind of role-playing Myers, and that's fine. Pretty unremarkable in my experience. Nurse. I'm actually going to put Nurse into sometimes toxic. Again, a lot of them play really sweaty and they'll likely beat your ass in 3 minutes, but it doesn't mean they're being mean. It just means they're good at Nurse. So I'm going to say only sometimes. Honestly, Nurse doesn't have the map control to afford time BMing people, so it's only sometimes for me. Billy's almost never or rarely. I feel like most Billies are chill. I'm just going to get that out of the game. Most Billies are pretty chill. I'm going to put them in almost never. In my experience, most Billies that I go against are chill. Like, it's very rare to encounter one that's, like, purposely trying to be a dick. Sometimes they'll return to the hook and try to, like, tunnel and stuff like that, and that's boring, but it's not being mean. It's pretty rare to encounter a mean Billy. They're usually just trying to go for sick curves. Wraith. As much as I love Wraiths, a lot of Wraiths are dicks. I don't know why. They like banging their bong on tops of bodies and stuff like that. Wraiths are pretty commonly dicks. I don't really know what it is about the killer that draws it. Maybe, again, easy to play, stuff like that. There is definitely an easy to play similarity between usually toxic, so. And then Trapper. There's like basement trappers and shit like that, but again, I'm going to put on the high end is sometimes toxic because there are some very annoying things that Trapper can do, but a lot of it is just built into his kit and not because the player is consciously trying to be mean about it. So yeah, there it is. There is the toxic tier list. Clown is forever going to be the only guaranteed toxic. There are like basically no chill clowns, but I think overall this is accurate to my experience. I'm sure you guys have different experiences. Maybe different MMRs have different levels and stuff like that, but this is how I would rate my experiences going against these killers, and curious to hear what you guys think about my placements of all of these. Vecna coming in a week. Until then, expect more dumb shit like this. Thanks for watching. See you next time.